Okay, so, okay, we're going to do a little warm-up, okay, to remind ourselves of how to simplify square roots. So, at the top, okay, what is the square root of normal 25? What's the square root then of negative 25?
Negative 5i.
Boom, 5i, no negative. Okay, because remember, when you square root that negative, you get an I left over. Remember, that stands for imaginary. Okay, now 50 is not perfect, but it can divide by 25. 25 times what? 25 times 2. So you would split it up into two parts. The first part should be perfect because what's the square root now of 25 negative? 5i root 2. Okay, next one. I'm going to put my list, sneak it over here in the corner. Okay, 8. What can 8 divide by that is a perfect square? Okay, negative 4 times what? Negative 4 times 2. And then what's the square root of normal 4? 2. So then the square root of negative 4 would be 2i. 2i, square root of 2 stays inside. Okay, last one. Remember, if it is a fraction, you can just include the negative with the top. So, what is the square root of negative 9? 3i. What is the square root of 16? 4. Okay? So, remember that fractions have that special property that you can do the top and the bottom separately. Okay, so we are going to talk now about complex numbers. Complex numbers are a plus bi. And what makes a number complex is that you're going to have an imaginary part because it has an I in it, and you're going to have a real part that does not have an I in it. Now, the standard form would be that you would put the real part first and the imaginary part second, but that really doesn't matter that much. So, it is only complex if it has both of those pieces. Okay, you are going to combine like parts. Okay, so this first part should be super easy. Okay, if I'm doing number 5, I am going to combine the parts that are either both real or both imaginary. So, BB, looking at number 5, which parts can combine that are both real?
1, 3.
Okay, what is 1 plus 3? Great. Okay, now I'm going to combine the imaginary parts. Okay, I have an 8i and a minus 5i. How many is that? 3i. You are done. Okay? Alright, let's look at number 6. Now notice here I have a negative sign. I'm subtracting. When you subtract, you need to remember that that distributes into the parentheses. So I'm going to write this one the same, 2 plus 6i. But if it's a minus, you need to distribute. So that would now be a minus 7 and a minus 9i. From here, you're going to combine like parts. So what is 2 minus 7? Negative 5. And what is 6i take away 9i? Negative 3i. So far, so good? Okay, what will I need to do on number 7 to simplify before I combine like terms? Distribute the 3. So I'd have 3i plus, and notice I have to leave this alone for right now because you have to distribute. If you think about PEMDAS, okay, what comes first, multiplying or adding and subtracting? Multiplying. So this 3i has to just sit at the front and do nothing for now. Okay, 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5i is 15i. And then once I get it to there, which parts can combine? The i's. So I have a 3i and a 15i. How many is that? So I would put my 12 first and then my 18i second.
Question.
Yes?
A.
Huh?
Does it have to be?
Okay, so technically it doesn't matter what order you put it in, but like on your semester exam, which I don't get to write, which is why I'm kind of trying to bring that up, they're going to put it in this order. So like if you put on your homework 18i plus 12, I don't care. If you put it on a test, I don't care. But if it's multiple choice, you should know that they're going to put that order with the imaginary part second. Okay, so far we should be okay. Okay, when you take the square root of -1, what did we say that is yesterday? I. Okay, little bit of scratch work over here. So if I is the square root of -1, right? This is the same, it's just backwards. What would happen if I squared both sides? What is I squared gonna be? If this square root and this squared cross out, what is I squared the same as? -1. Because remember, when you square, that crosses out the square root. That doesn't change what's in the middle. Okay? So there are two definitions with I in it that you need to know. The first one is this. The second one is this. So whenever you get an I squared, that is equal to -1, and you're going to replace it. Okay? So put a little star here, though. Whenever I is squared, the I cancels out to a -1. I squared cancels out to a -1, and there are no more I's in that term. Okay, so let's look at number 8. Okay, I'm going to distribute the 3i to the 6 and the -2i. What is 3i times 6? Multiply. 18i. What is 3i times -2i? Well, let's do the number first. What's 3 times -2? -6. And then if they both have an I, that means it's I squared. But what is I squared going to cancel out to? -1. So that's 18i minus 6 times -1. And you would cross out the I squared. You would put the -1 in instead. Now remember, those are still multiplied. So what is -6 times -1? Now it's a positive 6. So I'd have 6 plus 18i. If you want to put 18i plus 6, okay, that's fine. I don't care. But just know that on your semester exam, it'll be written with the real part first. Okay, let's look at number 10. Okay, number 10, I'm going to double distribute this time. What is 5 times 5? Multiply would be 25, right? You were close. Okay, and then 5 times 4i, what do we get there? Plus 20i. Okay, then I'm moving to my second distribution. Now I have the -4i. What is -4i times 5?
-20i.
Okay, and then what is -4i times 4i? -16, and then I squared. Okay, let's combine some like terms here. What is positive 20i? Minus 20i. They zero out. Good, those are both gone. So then I have 25 minus 16, and then what is I squared going to be replaced with? A -1. And if it was a -16, but now I'm multiplying it by -1, what does that switch to? They're both negative, so they multiply to a positive. What is 25 plus 16? 41. Now, in this case, is this still considered a complex number? The answer is no. What does a complex number have to have? A real part and an imaginary part. So this would be considered complex because it has both parts. This would be considered real because it doesn't have both. Okay? All right, last one that we're going to do together from this section is number 11. What does this squared mean? How many of them do you have? 2. So I'm going to have 3 minus 2i times 3 minus 2i. So what is 3 times 3? 9. What is 3 times -2i? -6i. Okay, going back to my double distribution, this time on the minus 2i. What is -2i times 3? -6i again. Okay, now multiply those last two terms. negative 2i times negative 2i. What is the negative 2 times the negative 2? Plus 4i squared. Very good. Then I want to combine my middle terms here. Are these guys both going to cross out? No, they're both negative. What is negative 6 minus 6 more? Okay, so I have 9 minus 12i plus 4. And then what does I squared become? Negative 1. And now if that's 4 times negative 1, what is that really? I'm just going to cross it out and put minus 4. Are there any parts that can combine then? Which ones? Yeah, what is 9 minus 4? So 9 take away 4 is 5 minus 12i. Make sense? So when you are multiplying, if you get an I squared, the I goes away, you put a negative 1 in its place. Okay, turn over to the back. Last thing we have to learn with imaginary numbers. Okay, a conjugate is when you change the sign in the middle. So if your complex number is a plus bi, the conjugate of that is a minus bi. And the reason that you use conjugates is that, let's put a little star here. Okay, multiply by the conjugate. And the i's cancel out. When you multiply a complex number by its conjugate, the i's end up crossing out. And so there is a rule with complex numbers that you are not allowed to have i's on the bottom. Okay, do you remember in geometry where you couldn't have square roots on the bottom? Do you remember that? And you learned how to get rid of them? This is the same thing, it's just more annoying because it's i's instead of square roots. Okay, so when you rationalize the denominator, okay, what that means is that you have no i's on bottom. So that is the goal for these next 4 examples, is that they have an I on the bottom, but we want to get rid of it. Okay? So we're actually going to work number 13 first. So look at number 13. Okay, so it's 2 over 5 minus 3i. Okay, so what is the conjugate? Remember, conjugate just means switch the sign on 5 minus 3i. 5 plus 3i, right? So I'm going to put a 5 plus 3i and a 5 plus 3i. Now, the rule with equations, you know how if you do something on one side, you have to also do it on the other side? The same thing applies to fractions. If you're going to square root the top, you have to square root the bottom. If you're going to multiply the top, you have to multiply the bottom. So think about it. That's the same as like with normal equations. Okay, on top, we are going to distribute 2 times 5, 2 times 3i. What is 2 times 5 on the top? 10. What is 2 times 3i? 6i. Done. Okay, we distributed the top. On bottom, you're going to have to double distribute, but it's the same thing. Okay? So, just like we were doing on the front, what is 5 times 5? 25. Plus, what is 5 times 3i? Plus 15i. Okay, now I'm going to move to my second term, which is the minus 3i. What is minus 3i times 5? Minus 15i. And then what is minus 3i times 3i? Minus 3 times 3 is 9. And then what about my i's? Now it's I squared. Okay, now watch what happens when you multiply by the conjugate. What's the 15i and the minus 15i going to do to each other? They're going to cross out. And then you're like, wait, there's still i's left over. If it's I squared, what can it be replaced with? Cross that out. That's now just a negative 1. So really, on top, I have 10 plus 6i. And on bottom, I have 25 minus 9. But if it's times by negative 1, that switches to a plus 9. Now there's no i's left on the bottom. Can I combine the 25 and the 9? Yes. What would that give me on bottom? So 34. Okay? So you multiply by the conjugate on top and bottom. Okay? And when you do that, you should be eliminating all of the i's off the bottom. Okay, let's do number 12 now. So I have 6 over 2 plus I. What is the conjugate of 2 plus I? 2 minus I. And remember, if I'm going to multiply by 2 minus I have to do it on both top and bottom. Okay, let's distribute the top. What is 6 times 2? 6 times 2? Okay, 12. Minus, what is 6 times negative I? Good. Divide. Okay, now we're going to do the bottom. What is 2 times 2? What is 2 times minus I? 4 minus 2I. So far, so good? Okay, next I'm going to move to the plus I right here. What is plus I times 2? What is plus I times 2? That'd be 2I, right? And then what is I times minus I? I squared minus I squared. Now, here's why. You have to remember each time you're multiplying. You're not adding. If it was I and negative I and you were adding, boom, they cross out. But if it's 1I times negative 1I, you'd get the negative 1 in the front, and then they both had an I, so it turns into I squared. Okay, what happens in the middle with the minus 2I and the plus 2I? They cancel out. And then if it's a minus I squared, what is I squared the same as? Negative 1. So really, I have 4 minus negative 1. What is minus negative 1 the same as? 4 plus 1. What is 4 plus 1 on the bottom? 5. And what did I have on the top? And you're done. So your I terms should all cross out on the bottom if you used your conjugate correctly. Okay? Skip down to number 15 for me. Okay, look at it. I have 4 plus I on the top. I have 7I minus 2 on the bottom. What conjugate am I going to use here? The one from the bottom. Very good. So if it's a 7I minus 2, my conjugate is 7I plus 2. Now, it's important for you to notice that on those other two examples, we kind of got away with single distribution on the top. Okay, in this case, we're going to have to do double on both, which is okay, but you should at least notice that, okay? So, here we go. 4 times 7I, then 4 times 2. Put it on your paper. Okay, think about what those multipliers are. What is 4 times 7I? 28I. What is 4 times 2? Okay. Now we're going to our I right here, plus I. What is I times 7I? Good, 7I squared. And what is I times 2? 2I. Okay? Let's go ahead and combine like terms just to finish off the top. So, in this case, do my I terms cross out? But were they conjugates to each other? No. Whose conjugate is that? Not the tops, it's the bottom. So I expect that to happen on the bottom, but not on the top, because they're not conjugates with each other. So what is 28I and 2I? 30I. Okay? And then when I look at my 8 and my plus 7, is that going to stay a plus 7? Why not? What is I squared the same as? A minus 1. And if I do negative 1 times 7, that's going to be 8 minus 7 on the top, which is how many? 1. So I have a 1 on top plus 30I. Now let's do the bottom. Ready? So I have 7i times 7i. What's 7 times 7? 49. What's I times I? I squared. Okay, then I have 7i times 2. 14i. Okay, then I move to my second term, minus 2 times 7i. What do I get there? Negative 14i, because it's the 2 and the 7. And then what's negative 2 times 2? Negative 4, right? From there, what happens in the middle with the 14i's? They cross out. And then if that's a 49i squared, what is I squared the same as? Which means my 49 is really a negative 49 minus 4. And what is negative 49 minus 4 more? Good. Make sense? Hard or easy? In the middle? Okay. Alright, the last one we're going to do is 14. And here's the question for 14. Is the bottom considered complex? Why not? Which part is it missing on the bottom? The real number. It has the imaginary part, but it doesn't have a real number. In this case, is there still an I on the bottom? Is it breaking the rule? Yes, but you can't use a conjugate if you only have one part. So all that you have to do is multiply by I on top and on bottom. Okay, now watch what happens. Okay, on bottom, what is 7i times I? 7i squared, but what's I squared the same as? Negative 1. So what's 7 times negative 1? Negative 7. Is the I going to be gone off the bottom? Yes. Now, we still have to do the top. So we're going to distribute what is I times 4? 4i. And then what is I times I? I squared. But what is I squared the same as? So it'd be 4i minus 1. So in that case, if you just only have the I on the bottom, you would just multiply by one more I and keep it simple. Okay, but if it has both parts, you have to use the conjugate. Make sense? Okay, so I want you to do one of the conjugates off the back of your homework. I want you to do number 13. What should you be multiplying top and bottom? 5 plus 3i. Okay, on top, what should you get if you times by 2? Yeah? Good. Okay, and then on the bottom, okay, think about 5 times 5 is what? 25. When I multiply 5 and 3, I'm going to get plus 15i, minus 15i. I'm not even going to write those because they're just going to cross each other out. And then what is negative 3i times 3i? Negative 9i squared. And then that I squared is going to cross out the negative 9 to turn it into a plus 9. So you should have gotten 10 plus 6i over 25 plus 9. Okay, because remember, the I squared basically switches the sign. Okay, so then from there you'd have 10 plus 6i over 34. Okay? You'll notice that 12, 14, and 15, I need you to switch them. So I wrote them up here, though, for you. Okay, number 12, in case you can't read it, is a 5 on top, 3i plus 6 on the bottom. Number 14 is 4 plus 6i on top and a 2i on bottom. Number 15 is a 3 minus 2i on top and a 5 plus 2i on bottom. Remember, what part are you getting the conjugate from, the top or the bottom? The bottom every time. Don't take the conjugate off the top. Great, good job. And then guys, on Friday, we are going to do our quiz on like a Kahoot game. Okay, so I need you to bring your laptop or your little Chromebook. Okay, and if you don't have a Chromebook, you can do it on your phone. That's fine. But I've noticed that a lot of times the phones get kicked out of the quiz and you have to like start it over. So I would bring your laptop on Friday. Okay. It's going to be really fun. A math game. Tion, do you want your report card? Or not report card, your average. It's not really accurate anymore, but you were gone the day I passed them out. Were you gone right before Thanksgiving? Okay, that was when I passed it out. So I'll go ahead and give it to you, but you're going to get a new one tomorrow.